New article up on the front page of dailyfaceoff.com. You spent some time with Craig Conroy.
Yeah, and speaking of that, a great actual segue to the free agent talk is surprise. I mean, I was certainly surprised to hear this when Craig Conroy said it, but he's excited and looking forward to free agency. And I think we'd all be sitting back saying, okay, retooling, rebuilding, whatever R word you want to use for the Calgary Flames, spending money in free agency isn't typically one of those avenues that you see teams take. I think that they're not going to be enormous. They're not going to be big game hunting in free agency this summer, but I think they're going to be all over a bunch of mid-tier guys to try and keep this team as competitive as they possibly can. They're not going to be tanking. That part isn't really a surprise. I think they needed to turn things over to the young guys, and what you're seeing from Connor Zary and Pospisil and the rest of the group, like that's been the big shot in the arm this season. That's not going to change. But when you've got 18 or 19 million bucks to spend, and you could have a couple guys come in on 2, 3, or 4 year contracts that can sort of prop you up in between. Well, that seems like that's the target that the Flames want to go through.
Right shot D. What else would they look at?
Yeah.
I would guess some middle six help forward wise.
They got like 12 guys under contract already. It's crazy.
We just talked about taking some of the assets that they've got. For me, it was Bowen Byram and Pinder keeps saying Pinder. I forget the guy's name again. Holtz.
Yeah, Holtz in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
If those are the kinds of guys, now you're not going. That's not free agency.
No.
But if they're looking at not taking a long, slow redo on this team and organization and staying relevant, is that a possibility that they target those types of players? And are those players even really that available?
Well, I think they're available in the right deals, but he acknowledged in our conversation, Craig Conroy, that it's really hard to make trades for those players. And I don't think that they really want to dip into a lot of their futures and assets in order to try and pull it off. So that's what I was reading between the lines. He did obviously talk about the Markstrom situation and a conversation that needs to be had. They have not addressed it yet. The elephant in the room, which is Markstrom's comments from a couple weeks ago now, where he said that things could have been handled better up top or handled differently, I believe is the exact quote. He doesn't seem concerned. He said he takes what Markstrom said with a grain of salt. He thinks he's a true pro. And, but obviously the competitive factor of where will the Flames be and what's their plan for this summer, that's going to be a big part of the Markstrom conversation. And now, especially with the news today of Vladar being out, not just for the rest of the season, but I know he's according to the release, going to be ready for the start of next year. Anytime you have a hip done, I think it raises some real questions about your game. Is there a chance that the tandem next year is Markstrom and Wolf?
Yeah, we were kind of kicking it around. The one thing that you feel like, of many things maybe, that held back a Vladar deal was he's got another year at 2 point whatever million. Now it's into the final year, and maybe he's more tradable. And now he's a guy that's coming back from hip surgery. There's some options there. Wolf, Markstrom, Wolf, Vladar. I don't think Wolf is going anywhere. The one thing that we agreed on is that Wolf has to be on the NHL roster. Whether that means putting Vladar on waivers, maybe you lose him. You have to do whatever you can. I don't think you force a Markstrom trade. That's going to work itself out. But you need to find a way to get Wolf on the roster to start the season.
Yeah, and I don't care whether it's Wolf and Vladar or Wolf and Markstrom. He needs to be the constant. I think you watch these games that he's played this month and you're like, okay, yeah, like it's not progression in the NHL is not always a straight line, but it's abundantly obvious that this guy is your goalie of the future and could be an absolute star in this league with the right continued development and patience. But the Markstrom thing is going to be interesting because I think the Ullmark availability really kind of, I don't want to say it throws a wrench into things, But if you were thinking heading into this summer based on, the run up to the deadline before deadline day itself, that Markstrom was really going to be the only guy that's the top tier goalie available, the Flames were dealing with an absolute position of strength. Now, not to say that they're not, because they do have these three guys, but if Ullmark is there, and it certainly seems like the Bruins, they not only tried to make a trade, but had gotten to the final stages of it before he blocked it.
With LA?
Yep. That really, to me, it changes the complexion of the goalie market itself.
So just to back up a tiny bit, they have Swayman and Ullmark. Swayman's an RFA this summer. Ullmark's got one more year at 5. You believe the Bruins have arrived at the conclusion that they're keeping Swayman and Ullmark will be moved?
Correct. Well, Swayman's, as you mentioned, as RFA, needs an extension, and his numbers have been better this season. And he's way younger. He's
younger
the guy,
for sure. Right? Yeah.
He's the guy that they're going to pay, and you'd have to think that he's somewhere in between 5 and 6, at least. He was at what, 3.7 this year? Yeah. So he's getting a pretty big raise, and you're probably not going to want to be spending more than $10 million in goaltending, right?
I just to kind of double back, because we talked about it briefly, and then we kind of got into the Markstrom thing. I think ordinarily when fans hear that their team has cap space and they have money to spend and they're going to be active in free agency, you get excited. Well, who's it going to be? Who's coming to town? This is awesome. But to Ryan's point, it already feels like there's a glut of wingers.
Yeah,
you could every team would love to have another center. You need some blue line help. We've talked about in net. I don't know, and I think this is a fan base. This is got for Conroy, tired of overpaying guys or paying guys too much just to be here.
I don't think that's going to happen.
I guess I'm cautious to kind of hear that. It's great that you've got the cap space. Depending on the market and all of that, I almost feel like just hang on. Just
what's the rush?
Don't rush. Yeah.
That's actually been the huge refrain in my mentions today on social media is like, oh, look, it's ownership overreaching again. That they want this team to be competitive and they're going to go out and spend and get themselves into trouble. Can't we just stick to the script? But let's rewind a little bit to the conversation we were having a year ago, which was this team's never actually going to bottom out. Not with Markstrom here. Probably not with Wolf if he plays well. Not with Kadri, Weegar, Huberdeau. They don't have the ability to get to the studs to tear it down to the studs. There's no chance that they could do that. So do you at least try and, if you don't get yourself into trouble with term, try and go from being a team that played at a 93-point pace for the last 70 games of the season, maybe bump that up a little bit so you could be a 7 or 8 seed in the meantime of where you're trying to continue to develop these players and prospects and also drafting for the future. Like, is it possible to have your cake and eat it too? Where by the time you get to, your top level draft picks are in the lineup and these prospects that you've now traded for that you feel like can be something 2-3 years from now, by the way, when this new arena opens, can you hold, at least a competitive balance between now and then while keeping the door wide open for all those players to come in?
So I've mentioned this a bunch. I don't know that, I want to know your thought on how important it is. Next year, they owe a first for Sean Monahan. It'll be their own unless it's the top 10. Otherwise, it's Florida's. We assume Florida's not going to bottom out next year. Florida's good. It would be quite a disaster if Florida didn't have a very late pick next year. In the philosophy of asset management, next year would be a very good year to finish 9th from the bottom, 8th from the bottom, 10th from the bottom, or worse, and keep a high-end pick in the draft rather than give that to Montreal. How much would that one variable play into your roster building this summer?
It's not. And I even left some quotes on the cutting room floor. Craig Conroy could not say more clearly that there will not be a culture of losing or trying to lose.
Yeah, but they're not trying to lose this year, and they could very easily be a top 10 pick, right? There's They're 12 right now.
They're closer to being 16 than they are to 9.
They're 3 points.
I think there's a bit of, and it's not to me, it's less about culture in that. I think to take an 82 game season to start essentially in a month and crafting a roster to get into the top 10 or the bottom 10, whatever you want to call it. Like I get you build a very good case there, Pinder. You can totally get it. I don't know. I don't think they're bad. I'm with Frank. I don't think they're bad enough. If you're San Jose and you look at it, okay, we got really nothing in net. Our defense, we've got one guy who's a veteran. That's easier to do. Chicago, they won for years, then they were really bad. Unless you're getting rid of Kadri, Huberdeau, Coleman, Anderson, Weegar, they're not that bad unless the goaltending completely falls out. But I don't.
The whole thing, right?
I don't think you. But I don't think you start. I don't think you plan for that.
No, I'm not saying go try to be bad. What I'm saying is you're really close to already that bad, and you got 60 games from Tanev and Hannafin that aren't here next year, and you got Vezina votes for your goalie. You don't have those things next year necessarily. So you might try to be good next year and say, oh, we'll go out a right shot D, and you still might be bottom 10 anyway. They've got one of the, by many measures, the top goalie by goals saved above expected in their net this year, and they're 12th from the bottom.
I think we all agree on that. But when you say next year's a good year to be bad, so what? I guess what would you do if you're Conroy, or what would you want Conroy to do?
Well, you move Markstrom. That's what you do. You try to find the best young assets you can get for Markstrom. And unless that market is very soft or he's keyholed on one team, then he comes back. But otherwise, you move him because you're going to have less saves next year, almost no matter what, if Markstrom's gone. Even if he's back, he hasn't had 2 consecutive strong years here. And this is about as good as he's looked ever.
Can I ask Frank, because I'd rather have Frank's opinion than you two idiots, but can it be done? Like, when you look at the good teams out there, it feels like a lot of them weren't very good, and they've got a high-end center, and they've, you know what I mean? Like, there are trademarks to really good squads, right? Goalie, top-end D, goalie, a number one center that's dominant, right? Like, can Conroy thread that needle? Is it possible? Are there examples of teams that have done it?
There's one right in front of you, staring at you in the face. The Nashville Predators.
Oh,
they were not trying to be good this year. They made a bunch of changes.
But there's a difference between being good and I guess what? I think, and we talked about this last year at the end of the year. What Flames fans, what Pinder's annoyed with, I get sick of, Boom gets sick of, Flames fans in general get sick of, is this middling fucking middle that we seem to find ourselves in forever.
7th to 10th in the
We're
West.
not really bad, and we might make the playoffs next year. Absolutely. That is 100% the case. And if you make the playoffs, you have a chance. But damn it, when you look at our lineup, you really got to squint. You really got, like, Zari's been awesome. Pospisil's been awesome. They're a million. They had, like Pinder just said, you had Vezina goaltending. You had top 4 defensemen that were really good. You're still nowhere near the playoffs.
They're 1 point out of a top 10 pick, but with all the things that have gone right this year. They're 1 point.
But even with all that aside, can you thread the needle to becoming an upper echelon team where you're locked into a playoff spot for 5 to 10 years and you're going to be good? Because I don't know that the Flames, they might make the playoffs next year, but they could finish 5th. That's a big variance.
So here, if I were to spell out what and this wasn't verbalized to me, I'm just reading between the lines, that if I think the way the Flames are looking at these next 2 seasons beyond this one are flip a coin. If we get in, fine. If we don't, fine. It's not really our focus. Our focus is 2027 and trying to make the playoffs from 2027 to 2032. And being, to your point, a really strong team that has a chance to contend then. And the only way to do that is by drafting well and getting picks and piling and stacking those things up on the back of your scouts. That's
like
how
that.
I think they're really thinking about it. But in the meantime, knowing that you're paying these other guys anyway, and that it's not like you're going out and instead of spending, 62 or 82, like it's still a significant sum of money, whatever the floor is next year. You might as well spend just a little bit more and at least give yourself the opportunity to get there.
Well, and you can go get those assets, and if it doesn't work out, trade them as well. I guess. But
The point is, they're not going to be getting married to anyone this summer that's going to be a pain in the ass contract at any point in time.
that would be the fear. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so they
It's
might
not
go
going to be for
shopping
long
and buy
term,
nothing.
and it's not going to be for big money.
I was going to say, don't do anything day one. Don't be a day one team. You have cap space, you have cap money. There will be bodies. I feel like the bodies of it that they would be interested in or should be aren't top of the market guys.
Then that's what I said right off the hop, was not high end players, but the mid tier guys for 2, 3, 4 year deals that can help bridge this gap between here and there. When not only do you need warm bodies, but to Craig Conroy's point, you need vets that can help teach your young guys. And they've got some of those guys, but did you guys see the clip this week of Nick Foligno battling with Kevin Korchinski in Blackhawks practice?
Yeah.
I could not, and we played the clip on our show today, could not love that clip anymore. 36-year-old guy, 1,200 games into the league, 10 to 15 games left in an otherwise dreadful season with a team that has a 300 points percentage. And they're doing battle drills in front of the net. And not only is he battling hard and is willing to get pushed around by a 20 or 21-year-old defenseman, but then afterwards, after battling his ass off, is slamming his stick on the boards, loving it, and celebrating the whole process. Those are the types of guys, not saying Nick Foligno specifically, maybe there's a better version of that, but the culture part of what the Flames are trying to build, I hate the word culture because it gets thrown around so much, but they need something better than what they've had, I think, the last few years. I think Backlund is a big part of that, but they've got to ratchet it up a bit. And this whole idea of, to your point, Pinder, of being like, hey, you know what? We want to try and get inside the top 10 for a pick next year. Like that, I don't think that's any part of their thought process.
Yeah, well, that can't seep down to coaches and players. You build a team to try to win, but also understand if you didn't get Vezina goaltending, you're firmly in the top 10 right now.
What did you have there, Rhett?
I was going to say, because I love what Frank's talking about, because it pulls at my heartstrings, to be quite honest, because I believe that there's not enough guys in the league that have that in them. And I'm talking about what Foligno's showing you. Anyway, to tie it to the Flames.
Classic Rhett boner there.
I think there's leadership in that room, but there's no personality. And to me, I don't know Foligno from personally, but from the clips that you see, he's got personality along with the leadership stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, Kadri might be considered a leader, but there's quiet leaders, and then there's guys with personality. My complaint about the Flames organization right now, their leadership group doesn't have personality. It doesn't have pizzazz. It doesn't have a sense of humor to it. I know Backlund. I know him personally, and I think he's a good person, but that's not him, right? Like he's not like that, Foligno. And I think that what you're saying would be.
So you don't want to be building any more Lego towers. Is that what you're saying?
You know what? You need to, because it does take a special guy. Because you can have guys who are later on in the career, and if it's a non-playoff season, they may have zero interest in babysitting or being a Crash Davis for Nuke LaLuke kind of a thing. But Nick Foligno is doing that, and we've kind of also that we saw him bugging around with Bedard and stuff. You love seeing that. I just wonder how rare it is to find a guy who realizes, I'm probably not winning. I'm just trying to think, because Foligno chased it for a while, right? He was in Toronto for a year. It didn't work for him.
Austin.
But who better to go out and find that, though, than Craig Conroy?
Well, does he not have that in like Weegar, Coleman, and Anderson? Like, I don't see any lack of personality with those three, right?
Don't know them. Maybe.
He
I don't know.
actually raved, by the way, about Huberdeau and the work that he's seen behind the scenes. He
Oh,
said he's
get out of here. Don't give us the reporter bullshit, Conroy. Get out of here.
okay.
What's he going to say?
He actually talked exactly about that. He's the guy that's taking everyone out for dinner. He's the guy that's getting everyone together and
Oh,
going
good.
places. So
I hope I'm wrong.
I'm not there. I don't know, but I'm just
Mhm.
telling you what he brought up unprompted was the leadership.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out more of our content right here on the Flames Nation YouTube page. We had a bunch of great long form interviews. You can check out some videos we've done as well outside of the studio. And of course, if you want more writing or merchandise stuff, flamesnation.ca or nationgear.ca. Appreciate you watching.